Hey, everybody. Welcome to Bound to Truth. This is Chris Lopez, your fun host. Hope everybody's having a great Sunday. And it's going to be a special episode. I'm sure everybody is talking about what's going on tomorrow. But before we jump onto that, I am going to let you people know how to reach me. boundtotruth34@gmail.com. Questions, concerns, comments, insults, compliments, anything you want to send my way, please send it. Also, Facebook, Bound to Truth. Also on X, Bound to Truth, and on YouTube, Bound to Truth as well. That's another platform. Still working on some other platforms and so forth. But hey, everybody, I invited a very special guest of mine, someone very, very local here who I buy some great chicken feed from. Great talks with this dude, and he's just a cool, eccentric, big-hearted, loving, inquisitive guy named Robert. Robert, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing very well. How are you doing, man?
Not too bad, not too bad. Just prepping up, a bunch of food and everything, making bows and arrows just in case the things go bad tomorrow, no. Uh but no,
It's fun.
I know we've talked a while to get you on the podcast. You have so many great insights and your conversations. We can go on forever. But of course, this coming up with the April 8th eclipse. And I know you said you did a lot of research and you have a lot to say, which I'm excited to hear because I'm going to have a lot of questions. But before we begin into that, I want to give you the platform to kind of talk a little about yourself, share as much as you want, and then when you're ready, we'll jump to the subject. Go ahead, bud.
Okay, well, my life has been something out of a storybook. It really has. My dad had a liver transplant when I was like 8 or 6, and I had to pack his stomach with gauze and take care of him, and he healed, but he really didn't heal for a long time until he came across God. And I think all of these stories that we try to understand and grasp about the world, it always leads back to God. If you believe it all, if you've taken the chance to open your mind up that far, I mean, just like this eclipse, I mean, it all just goes back to Noah and Moses, and I mean, in my life, I've had multiple miracles. I've almost got like 35 times, and I kind of keep track because it's just awestruck at how many times. I mean, my sister almost drove, well, she did drive me off the cliff at 120 miles an hour, 5 people in a four-seater car, and I was the only one with any permanent injuries. All I have is a bald spot on my scalp, and that's it. And that's from launching through a window at 120 miles an hour. And I didn't even have scratches on my back from when I landed on the ground. I mean, that's how much God sometimes protects me. And I think the rest of the time, we're meant to get some bumps and bruises, and God doesn't say we're protected from that, but it's definitely awe-inspiring at how many signs are coming on the world, like the cicadas or whatever, the bugs that are popping out of the ground literally this month. Biggest burst of these bugs in 217 years. At the same time, this eclipse is happening and it's crossing the exact same spot that's a fault line in the United States, and everyone says, these fault lines, when we have an eclipse, when the sun and the moon are in the same exact spot, it can cause a crack in the mantle and give off all these giant earthquakes. And I think that's what Taiwan had happen. And with their big earthquake that was, I don't know, what was it, 7.5 to 8.5, something like
Yeah, it
that.
was it was it was pretty massive, and yeah, it was interesting with these. You talk about the earthquakes, right? I was meeting with somebody yesterday for another interview I'm going to be doing next week regarding some personal experiences on certain things, and during that time when I got home yesterday, my dad was texting me saying, "Yeah, there was earthquakes in New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania." And then there were some earthquakes in California, Northern California, and I'm like, what the freak is going on? It's
Oh
like
yeah,
the
on
four
top of that,
corners, but whoa.
on top of that, it was only like a month and a half ago that California got hit with like flood warnings, and giant waves were crashing into the shoreline and flooding the waterfront. And this is
Right.
stuff that never happened before. I mean, growing up for my entire life, we didn't hear about this stuff, but it's all colliding on the same thing. And I for a while there, I was thinking, maybe this is the rapture events coming up, and for those that have eyes to see, let them see. But I also kind of have this giant image in my head that God's gonna choose to give us a second chance.
Well,
And
go ahead.
what?
Oh, so it's funny you said that because what I wanted to go to, like I was, I'm sure you've reached your sis already. So it looks like how it's creating that quote X. Some people are calling it a cross, but it's going over 7 cities called Nineveh, right?
Yes, sorry, my dog's messing around.
No, no, you're
Hey,
okay.
Josh, go.
No, it's
I'm
okay.
just
You're
around
good.
the house.
You're good. You're good. But it's crossing like 7 city towns and cities called Nineveh, which I thought was interesting. And
Yep,
the spot where it's supposed to be landing, that X spot is a town or city called Jonah.
yep. And you got Rapture, Tennessee, or something like that.
Yeah, yeah. What are the? I mean, what's your thoughts on that, man? So you think about 7, right? 7 days. You got 7 Ninevehs. You got crossing over Rapture, you're crossing, and you're landing on Jonah, and we all know the story of Jonah. Well, you know what? I don't think everybody knows the story of Jonah, but if you want to share that, go for it, and then we can get your thoughts about those interesting statistics, those odds of that crossing over in those areas.
Well, the funny thing, even bigger than that, is it was like 2,000 years from, like, what was it? Moses to shoot. I had all these things memorized, but sometimes things fly out of your mind. But
That's okay.
it like it. I know it was Jesus to Moses, and Moses to.
Was he Elijah?
Oh no, it was actually from the creation of Garden and Eden. So
Uh,
it's 2,000 years, 2,000 years, 2,000 years, and we're jumping in to the 6 to 7,000 years, and that's the day of rest for the Lord.
right,
So that's even more biblical. Like, what could be more rest than having the rapture happen? And
right.
that it's just awe inspiring that it could be that way. But I I I think God just wants to keep letting the ball roll. And yeah, I do think that there are some biblical events that will shake, the sinful, the people that are greedy, the people that don't champion charity in their community and spread their love around. And I mean, it's all great to have money and cars and jet airplanes and everything, but when you don't give anything back at all, it just it doesn't bode well in the eyes of God. And I think some of that stuff might change. If he's not going to do the rapture, he's gonna put some people down for the way that the government puts money in their pockets and bribes politicians and all these other things. I really see that as the sign that's really going to happen. And maybe all of these signs, he was maybe planning the rapture, but at the same time, I think he sees all the rest of us, all the people trying to believe and trying to understand, and he just wants more of us to spread around the world. And so maybe the rapture event in our minds was enough to inspire our faith, and that's enough to save the world. Wouldn't that be cool?
Yeah, I'll tell you this. It is it's definitely a mind wrapper on so many possible theories. I mean, obviously there's we had, I was talking to my uncle yesterday, and we were talking about this, and he says, well, you're gonna have different opinions on different people and so forth, which is great. I love that. His feeling is like, it kind of reminds me of like what happened back in the Y2K, that kind of fear tactic and or that kind of thing, which I totally get. I feel like the Y2K kind of has that similar feel to this, but there's something I think spiritually different And maybe that's just me. Maybe I was too
Well,
to
the
understand that. I don't know. I'm not saying I have that answer. I don't know. What do you yeah.
well, it's from the signs I've seen. I mean, the eclipse is in the sign of the whale, like literally pointing back to Jonah. And just like we
Mm,
said, freaking all these Ninevehs, like God is asking America to repent for their sins and maybe not have some more freaking porn sites and everything else. And I wasn't a judgy person at all of my life. I think we have the right to look at whatever we want online, but also like that doesn't make God super happy.
well, you know what they say, everything's permissible, but not everything's beneficial.
Yeah, very true.
Oh, yeah. And some interesting things I want to add to what we're talking about with CERN is, tomorrow is supposed to be the day that, or regarding that clip, excuse me, tomorrow is supposed to be the day that CERN is going to launch or use their Hadron Collider, right? Which is
Yep.
interesting. And then we're going to have, I believe, NASA's firing some rockets to the dark side of the moon.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I'm kind of
Um,
like scratching my head saying, why? Why is that? What's the point? I've heard it's something to do with grabbing or getting more because of this eclipse. I again, I didn't, this is things I'm hearing and reading. It's supposed to be more antimatter study type of thing or whatever. But I'm just kind of like, well, if there's nothing to be concerned about, what is all? Why is that happening? Why are they doing those things? What do you think? I asked,
um,
but what do you think?
I think that CERN is kind of being controlled by the devil.
Okay.
I mean, as weird as that is to say, I don't see it as really trying to unlock the secrets of the universe. It's more like trying to build a portal to the demonic realm, and by creating this portal, they want to flood the world with the demons that are supposed to be here after the rapture.
Mhm.
Um, so I
Mhm.
I think God and the devil kind of both know that someday they're gonna go to war again, and the devil's just always gonna be prepared. And I think every generation, just like the Nazis, God, the devil doesn't know the day or the hour, only God does. So
Right.
he continually prepares for the apocalypse because he wants to be ready when God sends his army. The devil wants his army there at the same time so that he doesn't waste any time and lose any men. And so, they even are already saying that if whatever they're planning for this solar eclipse for firing up that hadron collider, they're planning on making a bigger hadron collider, and they're actually making sure that it comes before the next eclipse, which is even another scary thing. Like I think it's like 2046 or something.
Mm.
They're gonna have a collider that's almost twice as big as they have now, because if they don't create this portal in time, they want to make sure the next time they're ready. Um,
Wow,
and,
that's yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
I mean, it's kind of freaking spooky, but also no matter what the devil does, like God's plan is always going to win out. Um,
Yeah, and you know what? God's in control. Sometimes I'll sit back and just eat popcorn and just watch what's going on. You're right. Like, God only knows the day and time when it's going to happen. However, I know, reading the Bible, Christ talks about watching the signs, right? Be aware,
yeah,
watch the
and
signs. Wars and rumors of wars. This has been like that this year. There's earthquakes, there's floodings, there's things going on. I'm not saying, not trying to,
pestilence.
yeah, yeah, we got the pestilence things going on. I mean, it's now, people out there, we're not trying to spook you, we're not trying to scare you. It's just these are things that it's interesting to kind of look and research. We encourage people to do that and kind of love to hear your feedback on that. As long as the world doesn't end tomorrow. No, no, it's not going to end. But yeah, I agree with you on the Hadron Collider with CERN. There's been rumors about CERN. Supposedly, that's where Lucifer fell, and that's why they have that collider there. I've heard, I've watched videos with CERN's rituals that they do, like these dances and everything that they do. Right? They have these rituals that go on that you can see on YouTube, which is kind of spooky. It's really weird. And to me, I think it's a very ceremonial type of thing. I think it's a tie between science and worship, the wrong kind, right? That people like, well, if science exists, this can't exist, and if this exists, and how they go hand. I'm like, no, they can go hand to hand. I do feel that they are trying to open some portals, and who knows what. I think it's another attempt to play God, right? I mean, that's my thing. If you can open portals and get to anywhere and try to cross over and think you can just jump to point A to Z without having to, do those dimensional parts playing God, people forget that just because you can go through one door, there could be something on the other side that you're not prepared for.
And it can come into our world. So that's
Exactly.
and maybe even the small, they do say that there is like wormholes that come out of the reaction of this collider, and they, scientists have proposed it could end our world, but they're so small, and everyone's like, they're just wandering wormholes and they aren't causing any problems. But what happens when too many of them gather up together? What happens after 20 years of them firing up this collider with enough wormholes going around the world? What it could, do to this world?
Right.
Who
No,
knows?
and that's a very fair point too. I mean, it's definitely it's lighting a match, man, and lighting a match near a can of kerosene or gasoline, and hopefully it doesn't fall in there, right? Um,
Yeah.
it's funny. I was talking to the gentleman I was talking yesterday. There's this movie back in the '80s by John Carpenter, and I encourage people to see it because it actually kind of made more sense being older. For at back then, I didn't, or back then watching, I didn't understand it, but until seeing these things that are going on now, it's a movie called Prince of Darkness, and it's basically about these group. Despite the sci-fi horror genre, it's kind of cheesy, but the whole point of the movie, the summary of it, is pretty much where this priest comes to the scientist and his students to help them decode something that they found underneath the church in their basement, some type of secret hiding from the church, where everything. But basically, they're like, well, you're having us read scriptures. Again, this is all fantasy, by the way, but it's we're having you want us to decode something and apply it to science that makes no sense. But the more they get into it, they realize that, oh, okay, there's it's kind of like that parallel universe, that there's a positive, there's a negative, right? They're like trying to bring over, you got God here, but then you got the anti-God that's trying to come through, right? Not saying that's real, but it was interesting because I kind of thought of that movie when I'm hearing what Cern's trying to do. Not, again, the rumors of opening not just wormholes to different dimensions, but different parallel universes. Again, very, very scary.
Yeah, and I think part of it, you look at Back to the Future, and you see that, young man took the sports memorabilia and
Yeah.
brought it back to his world, and then the other guy started betting on it and took over the whole freaking world. So, that might also be some part of their plan, is to go back and make billions so they can control all of us and make us all slaves. So,
Well, what's funny, when I taught you, it's funny you brought that up, because when I did a podcast about CERN, there was this group called D Wave or whatever project, where they created this algorithm where supposedly can, and again, I'm not a scientist, I'm going to explain this the best way I can, but suppose this algorithm, this AI algorithm, that can supposedly look at different parallel universes of possibilities that can happen to help make better decisions for our future, but enough where it doesn't create some type of alternate type of reality, but just small changes here or there, and to avoid certain outcomes, right? Like if we do this, but it leads up to this, then maybe let's not do that. But it's I mean, it's a little far fetched, but that's something to do with
well, you could even see that even being used by the devil. I don't want to create this reaction, so when he sees like he's creating too much bad in this one area, and that's going to cause a whole bunch of people to become Christians and pray to God. That's not what the devil wants. So he makes his decisions in such a way that it doesn't cause those giant push towards God.
Right.
And
Right.
yeah, I
Yeah.
can. I mean, that's the only way I can understand it. I mean, is why would you want to understand everything and control everything? Well, that would be the biggest thing is help the devil defeat God. That I mean, what more far out thing can you even imagine?
You
I
know what?
think that
That leads me to another question, which you make a good point. Do you think with all that's happening, tomorrow regarding the eclipse and all that stuff, those signs and what the Hedgehog Collider is trying to do, what we feel Cern is trying to do, open these portals. Do you think that's what you're saying? Because the devil knows his times is short, he knows what the outcome is going to be. Do you think he's trying to prevent that from happening? Like, do you think I mean, even though God's in control, right? God's always in control, but the devil's so delusional, saying, no, if I change this, I can alter this, I can alter that by doing this, by having, I mean, that sounds far fetched, but just curious, because he's trying to play God.
well, I don't think it helps out his case at all at postponing it if they're already sacrificing the red heifers at the building of the new
Yes.
temple in Jerusalem. I mean that thing's going on, and they've had every single piece of memorabilia of curtain rod and everything
To
stocked up.
the exact T, like to the
Yeah,
T, man. Yeah.
they made it like 50 years ago. It's just been sitting in a warehouse over
Yeah.
there. And they had all of the building materials. They were just stored in a random field for, the last 10 years. So they're trying to lots of people are trying to make the apocalypse happen, but also people aren't going to be something that can make it happen. Only God can.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so that's encouraging that we have a chance to survive and live in, and we don't have to worry about it all the time or at all. No, I think the biggest thing God ever wants is just to have us, wake up in the morning and say, "Hi, God." I think that's the biggest thing that the church is missing. Is God just wants that personal relationship where you know you're like, "Hey, Father, how are you doing today?" Like,
Right.
I
Oh,
think
absolutely.
church in general has put just such a sour taste in so many people's mouths because you go there to hear about God's message and you hear about the NFL game or the, freaking what did Oprah do today? It's like I didn't come here to listen to Oprah or else I'd be at home on the TV. And I don't know. I think God's even with this eclipse, God's kind of reminding us all just to step back for a minute and to say thank you, God, for having me be alive and the chance to live or have kids, or maybe you don't have any kids like me,
Yeah.
just a single person out here in the world having the ability to appreciate the nature that God's blessed us with. I mean, this world's really cool if we're not involved. So I think the point is just to step back and if you have eyes to see all the signs, it's freaking interesting.
Yeah.
um but also he doesn't want us to be afraid of it at all. One of the biggest people I've listened to in the past is um what was it, shoot, Alan Watts, and like some of these people, they have really far out ideas about the world, and they really dive deep into psychology and philosophy and everything. And one of the things Alan Watts said was, when you die, it's like taking off a shoe that's too small. It just feels so much better. So we don't
Wow.
have anything to worry about dying. Though the biggest thing with dying is leaving things unsaid, and that's the purpose of our life while we're here is to, just say, hey, Dad, I love you, or Mom, I love you, and try to be there for them when and if you can. And the rest of it just doesn't matter. I mean, I knew for a long time growing up with parents that have my mom had cancer a couple times and a defibrillator and all this stuff, and my dad had a liver transplant. I just knew that life I wouldn't have to be an old guy taking care of old parents. I was just going to be a young guy taking care of old parents, and my time was sooner than others to take care of my parents, but that didn't make it any different. And I think I did a better job. And I think that's kind of what this life is about, taking care of the things that are important to you when you have time. And so often we get lost in, all the other things we want to do, all the other vacations we want to have. And some of it's not so important. Some of it is. I mean, my memories of going on vacations as a kid, and I paid for my own trips to Whistler and stuff, countless times, like six, and on my own dollar, like freaking blew 15 grand one weekend. Like just stupid stuff as a kid, but that doesn't mean our whole life's supposed to be a vacation. It's just those really good memories that get to stick with you, and that's the cool part of life. That
Yeah,
that
yeah. Go ahead.
No, you're good.
No, no, and I think that's, as much as we like talking about these signs and theories and so forth, you're very much right on. At the end of the day, God's in control. I think you make a really valid point. I think about, well, why is the news media making such a big sensationalism about it, right? And all this stuff. And but yet you're saying, hey, these are more signs and everything. This is a reminder how to really enjoy to come back to what's important in our lives, right? You're putting more of a positive spin to it, which is good. And I think people need to hear that. We don't hear that enough, that, hey, man, it's just another wink from God, in a way, to kind of
It's
just,
a big wink. I mean, I don't think you could make it any bigger other than Russia deciding to launch a bomb and us blowing it up in the middle of the air. I think that's the only thing that
That
could
that
make
that
this
that,
more
that that's
interesting.
yeah that's definitely a very that'll be a heck of a wink. I want to come back real back to the heifer. I'm glad you brought that up because I did forget to bring that up. When is that happening, by the way? That's not supposed to happen tomorrow the same time, is it? Or because they have the right? They have the red heifers, or was there a delay because of what's going on in Israel? I know
No,
some type of ties
they
to.
they've already, from my understanding, is they've already sacrificed one. Um,
Okay.
but I know that there's supposed to be like three before whatever judgment sign. And I think the third one is supposed to be when the Antichrist goes into that temple, and that's the last heifer that has to be sacrificed. After that, the Antichrist says you don't have to sacrifice anything because he convinces everyone he's Jesus reincarnated,
Mhm.
and boo if you believe that.
Right, right. So do you think, regards to, with this big sign, that we're seeing tomorrow and everything, do you think the Antichrist, your opinion, is already here?
Um, I do, but I also, it falls back on what I said is I believe the Antichrist has lived here countless times, and each time when all the signs don't arise, then he dies and he comes back again. Uh,
Hmm.
so
Who would you say in the past that had that that potential of being that type of Antichrist spirit? I've heard Nero,
uh,
I've heard Napoleon, obviously, Hitler's another one. But what's your,
that's the one I heard. The last one was Hitler.
hmm hmm
Um, and it just wasn't time. I mean, the temple wasn't being built.
right,
So God, the devil should have known better to try back then because
right,
no one was working on the temple. But maybe it led us to the world where we would start building the temple because I think there has to be a reason that all these, people in that country want that temple built. I think it's in all of us that we just kind of wish that the world would end. A part of us is that we could just live sin free in heaven and have have no more desires of the flesh because we will have flesh, but it will be a whole different type.
right.
I
New
mean,
bodies
we
and everything, right?
yeah, I mean, from what I see, that's a lot of what the new spirituality that's been coming out has been saying with the whole 3D versus 5D, and we're shifting into another reality where we're all going to live kind of as light beings, and we'll all have more than enough. And I mean, there's a lot of this on the internet, and a lot of it goes all the way back to those, people like Alan Watts and I forget the lady. Shoot. Oh well, it doesn't matter. I follow a lot of psychological people that try to understand the world, and it doesn't really matter what religion we are. A lot of people even say the source instead of God. Like, still the same thing. Like, God wants us to be good to everyone and not be greedy. Like, pretty easy to figure out.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I totally. I think we make the message a lot more complicated than what it is. And because we can be very complicated people, complicated beings, different experiences, and we got to have grace for others. But I think we start having grace on ourselves too, and loving ourselves in healthy manners. I mean, for me personally, that's taken me years, and it's still a daily thing where you know. You hear Christ talk about love the Lord with all your heart, mind, body, and soul, but love the neighbor as yourself. And it took me years to figure out what that last part meant. And I'm like, well, if you can't love yourself in healthy ways, how are you going to love people in healthy ways? You know what I mean?
That was actually my biggest revelation that I've had.
Yeah.
Is I always try to love everyone as myself, but I don't love myself very good. So I had huge you know contemplations on whether I was a light-hearted Christian or whatever, and I've always been like, I don't believe 100% of the Bible, because I believe man influences everything it touches, and we can pervert the words of anyone, even God.
Right.
Uh, but I also, God kind of was telling me, like, I forgive you for everything. That's what I said when Jesus died. It is done. Your sins are forgiven. And yet we still have churches that all talk about, you watch porn, you're a sinner. You didn't treat your wife very good, you're a sinner. Like, you were greedy, you're a sinner. It's like, that's not what Jesus wanted us to go to church for. He wanted us to go to church and say we are forgiven,
Mm.
and in that forgiveness, I have found more love for myself. So it all draws back to what you just said.
Yeah. And
Love
that's,
your neighbor as yourself, but you gotta love yourself better.
and you know what? And it's funny because, and that's a good reminder too, is because, I tend to be hard on myself. We all do, I think. But, Christ ate with taxpayers and prostitutes, and he did all that. You're right.
Yeah.
And it's such a reminder. It's like, well, because we always get told, or I'll get in my own head and like, I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. It's like, it's not from God. That's not who God is. And so it's good to have those reminders. I like, it's like playing sports, right? Just because you have all the talent, sometimes you need to be coached to know the fundamentals before you can make sure it doesn't take that talent down. Like, hey, you got to have that coach behind you. Don't forget the fundamentals. Don't forget the fundamentals. Don't forget the fundamentals. Because if you lack on those fundamentals, then your game plan is gonna just fall apart. And I think it's good to have that reminder. And even this eclipse that's happening, like you said, that put that message out, man. That's a reminder for everybody. Hey, love yourself. Love the way that God loves you. You ask God to see you through His eyes. Because once you do that, you're going to have a lot more grace on yourself, right? Then when you do that, you're going to have better relationships with not just your wife or your husband, but with your children, but people all around you, even strangers. And that's the ultimate goal. I know for me, that's why I try to do daily, and it's hard. I think we all struggle with that, but that's what we try to do daily, or I try to do daily. On that. But um, so, any other thoughts on that CERN or the eclipse? So what do you think? What do you think is going to happen afterwards tomorrow? Do you think? Because I know there is going to be there's already a stated national emergency, right? I don't know if you heard about that all the way through New York. Do you think what do you think is the reasons why they are doing that? I've heard the reasons, but what do you think are those reasons?
In my mind, it all goes back to the same thing. They're opening a portal. They're trying to open a portal to hell, and they're just having police already and the people already, bunker down while they think fight these demons they release. It's like, you know, if anyone at all knows anything, I mean, there's even like a 13-year-old boy that's basically the next coming of not Nikola Tesla, but Einstein.
I,
And this
I
guy,
I had in my video. He talked about that. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, and he literally warned all of these scientists. He's like, you're literally opening a wormhole, and you don't know which one you're opening, and you're gonna go, release some evil in this world. So I think part of the reason the military is all there is because they know something's gonna happen. And the weirdest thing is when nothing happens and everyone just starts praising God because we we all have this anticipation of this event, and I mean there's just countless Christians online prophesizing about the end of the world, and I only heard one that even gave a possibility that this world was going to go or continue. And that one is like, the world's going to continue, but a lot of the people that have pocketed money for illegal activities and everything else, a lot of them are going to die.
Yeah,
That was like,
yeah,
it'll be interesting to see. And I don't wish for anyone to die. I really,
absolutely.
but I can see, if God's gonna let this world keep going, he's gonna shake some stuff up, and I'm just really glad that I'll be alive to see it, because it'll be almost comical. If
Right.
God is nothing, he loves comedy, and he loves music, and he loves to make everything biblically just aligned. So there is nothing short that this isn't a biblical prophecy. Like, I mean, if you can't see that the eclipse is in the sign of Jonah and he was gonna freaking destroy Nineveh, he was, and even in Moses' time, he asked Moses, he's like, should I just kill everyone and leave you here and we'll start over? And he's like, no. And so God didn't. So God has some points where he realizes we're just a little wacky, but he can appreciate us. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And I do think that the closer you get to God, the closer your soul gets to being a little bit more like Jesus, being forgiving and worshipful. And
Hmm.
but God doesn't need us to sit around all day just worshiping him. That's not what he wants. He wants us to get something done a little bit in our lives, but also he doesn't want us to ignore him for months on end. So
Right.
there's
Yeah. Yeah. No, man, no, I totally get it. So when I was reading about regarding the national emergency that's going on within specific areas, right, being strategic, the official, and I'm paraphrasing the official report, but supposedly because of everybody showing up to the event, they're trying to stock up on water and food and supply. I get that, it makes sense, but they also talked about they expect some cellular failure,
oh
communication
yeah.
failure. And I'm thinking, okay, either because there's going to be a lots of freaking uploads, or it's going to have something to do with the eclipse and the Cern and the rockets. I have no idea. What do you think?
I think you got a couple strong points there. I mean, between scientific experiments not influencing our radio signals from our cell phones and everything, like, of course, there's a huge possibility that all of our experiments can influence it. And then on top of it, if all the weight of the sun and the moon in the exact same place and everyone anticipating this event, regardless, people might just panic and just start making phone calls all over the place, and that itself could shut down our phone signals. So uh, it could be anything.
Or maybe it could be on purpose.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, let me ask you this. I mean, here's my thoughts on this. I'm what, 42? I'm in that cusp between not having a not having a cell phone, right? Being in high school and all that stuff, no problem. To having a cell phone, now it's a computer. And so I'm wondering how this generational react if something like that did happen during this event where there's like would you think people would freak out if everything just didn't work on their cell phone? I mean, we're still around each other, right? We still travel, but it's like, oh my God, what happened to so and so? What's going on here? I don't know. I can't call them. I can't text them. I can't do this stuff. Do you think people might have a little bit of a withdrawal or a freak out?
Well, I think they would, but I also know that we had cell phone outages like a month ago. There
Hmm.
was an event and like T-Mobile went down and some other carriers went down and like I don't know whether it was TikTok or something, but
Yeah, I remember that. I remember that event.
I think they've been testing our communication networks just to see which one would just freak us out the most. And so, yeah, maybe they're planning on something bigger or they're doing all this stuff so that when they actually do break our phone network because they screwed up in an experiment, that we all won't just think the world's ending.
Right. Well, you know what? You know what too is with all this going on, all this hype, and I'm not trying to downplay. When I say hype, I'm talking about the news media, right?
But it is propaganda. I mean,
I mean,
it's
yeah, the propaganda. My thought goes to what is going on behind the scenes. I know because what like why would you announce you're going to launch the Hadron Collider? Why would you announce publicly you're going to fire rockets on the moon? Like what's I mean, what's why play those cards, right? You know, usually those things are pretty under, not played. Yeah,
hidden.
but why would you why would you do that? We're gonna have that's my question is we're gonna have national emergency, expect potential phone outages because of this. We're gonna launch rockets, we're gonna do the Hadron Collider, we're gonna, we're doing all this stuff. Okay, you're playing your hand, supposedly. My question is there something else behind the scenes that we're not knowing what's going on potentially? And I couldn't even theorize what that could
But
be. What's your thoughts?
the only thing I could think is maybe the United States is turning over their sovereignty to Russia and China. That's about the furthest thing out I can imagine. Um, if they wanted to do an invasion, they'd shut all their networks down. They've already tried to, deplete our ammo supplies at our stores, and for freaking year and a half, I couldn't buy 22 ammo to shoot a bunny rabbit. Like,
Was it
I
high
mean,
priced and everything like per bullet?
that no, they were out of stock for
Oh,
a year
okay.
and a half. So they've been manipulating and trying to control what Americans have access to, whether it's information or technology or ammo. So yeah, if there was ever a chance that the United States was gonna, you know, just say we owe enough to the whole world that we're just gonna give up and sell out all the people and move to Hawaii and live there,
Well,
that's all.
you know what though? It's I mean, yeah, it's a possibility, but it's not far fetched in regards to being in debt with China, right? Uh,
No,
they do own a lot of our U.S. bonds, you know, and I know I remember during COVID that there was a lot of discouraging farmers to grow their crops.
and on top of it, now Bill Gates owns like a quarter or a half of
And he's
all
not
of
and
our.
he's not doing anything with them. And here's
Yeah,
another interesting thing. During that time, a couple years back, 2 3 years back to the COVID time, there was a farmer who was on the news. This is like Midwest, where the government was paying him not to grow his crops. They're going to give him a lump sum of money to make up his make his profit he's not going to make from doing his goods. But one thing he didn't realize is that they were upheaving his soil. And guess what they're doing with their soil? They're packing it up and sending it to China.
yep.
And I'm
There's
wondering what are we doing? Are we that broke or what's going like what's going on? Why
uh
are we doing?
their soil is no longer able to grow like ours. Um because of, if you have run a crop field, and all you do is grow, rice on that crop field for 100 generations, the soil is not going to be able to grow rice in that forever.
Right.
You need to put other crops in the ground so that it returns the nitrogen and phosphorus and all these other elements to the soil. You need to rotate your crop, and
Right.
that's not the way our society has done anything. We get the one tool to pull up the one crop, and that's the only tool we use.
Right.
And that's not the way God made soil to work.
Right.
I mean, it's smart, but we should be more in a society where those tools for mowing down that crop transferred in to the next field over and just move along with the crops. We shouldn't just yeah. I was an environmental science major, so I know the ins and outs of what you can do, and we're shipping them our dirt because their dirt doesn't have what ours does in it anymore because they farmed it forever.
Yeah. Wow. Um, this other question I want to ask you, with regards to the eclipse, we got election year. Any impact on that? I know people are like, well, what's got to do with the election? There's a lot of crazy stuff that's happening. Thoughts on that?
This one's one of those funny ones. That that one prophecy I told you I heard actually kind of said that both of those guys are on their way out, and I don't know how or when or if it's even going to happen, but that's what I
Talking
heard. And
about talk about
one,
Biden and Trump. Uh,
yep. So
Interesting.
that there's a lot of prophecies too that say, Trump was a sinful man and greedy man, but he was hidden by God, and now he is doing God's will. I don't know. I've always had pessimism in my heart over how he treated his employees and companies that he worked with, but that I can't judge because I don't have any personal proof. So but it will be funny. I know that both him and Biden both have taken money from American taxpayers. So I mean, when Trump was in office, he was in Mar-a-Lago paying himself with the American taxpayer money, funding his resort. So I don't think that that was God's mission for the world. Uh, but that's, I
Right.
don't want to piss off anyone politically. Uh, but also, the truth is the truth. He made money off of the American taxpayer, and if you can't believe that, then you should do some research, or I guess you can just forget I said anything. That'd
No,
be better.
no, you're this. Like I said, this platform, like I tell people, I'll tell you, platform's yours, man. You share your thoughts. That's the whole point. I'm wondering, with I can't say I'm not going to far reach in the whole conspiracy aspect of like election year and this and the eclipse. The only thing I can see tied to it is if something was detrimental to happen in society of what we're talking
Well,
about,
you can
and
you can see it's tied in because Trump created the Space Force, so he's probably a big reason why we're firing rockets at the moon.
how.
So it is tied together.
No, that's true too. It's true too. What I was gonna say is that if there was something pretty major that was going to happen, either even if nothing really happens, but what do the ripples look like, right? Like, if there's going to be economic or political tsunamis from this event of any sort or type, I don't know. Um, what would the only thing I could think of if that was true with what the guy was saying that either of them are not going to be in office, yeah, that they're both going to be not being
Not
there, right? That the only thing I could think of is that something's going to happen to the country. That's the only thing that can happen, right? I mean, that's just me.
here.
That's the only way I can see that happening is that the country is no longer functioning.
Oh no, this country can't fail.
Okay.
Not with all of the, homebodies that, take care of their farm and have their guns. And
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, I don't think with as many, lots of people would say rednecks, but there is a lot of white neck rednecks out there too. And that,
Right.
synopsis job and they have 67 guns in their closet. I mean, it it's pretty amazing the more that you learn about other people, their hobbies. It's kind of funny. You know,
Oh,
some of the
yeah.
richest I know have just these giant stockpiles of guns, and it's just like, okay, but I don't actually think you would ever fire one at a person. But also, you know, with as much that they accumulate in wealth, maybe they would just to protect their money. Who knows?
No, and you know what I meant by that? No, and that's a very good point because we're like the only country pretty much all pretty much what armed. Yeah, to the teeth. And what I mean like the country not functioning is basically the United States not being the same United States. Like maybe
but
the
but we're
states
not
start splitting off. Well,
we're
no,
not the same United States. All these wars we fought for like the last 10 years, we've pretty much lost all of them. We go in, we invade, and then we just end up shooting a bunch of civilians with a couple criminals, and then we can't ever catch all the criminals, and then we end up coming back home eventually, and it takes like 10 years to come back home. It's like most of the reason why we're out there is to show the world that we're relevant still. But that's a waste of a lot of money just to show the whole world that we're still strong and mighty. We should show the whole world that we're generous and take care of our disabled people and veterans and all the, you know, it's much of my heart, you know, the homeless and the kids, you know, we need to feed the schools, we need to take care of the homeless. And I tell you what, if I end up ever winning the lottery or anything, two to three-fourths of what I get, I'm gonna donate to feeding the hungry of this world, and maybe some scripture in there, but also not forcing anything on anyone, because the best thing about God in my eyes is doesn't really need any force, just needs one word of kindness, and you his word can go a long way. The That's the other thing that I tell you that I'm not very happy with the churches. They don't leave that one word there. They add one word after it that just changes the message. The message is God loves all of us.
yeah.
And I don't
No,
know.
no, no, that's good.
Like I
That's
said,
yeah.
it all this whole topic really is biblical. We can think of it just as an astronomical event and just something to watch, but the signs just all point to creation and Noah and Moses and, you know, Jonah. I mean, they're all just straight lined into this event, and there's gonna be something. And a lot of, I mean, there's even evidence online that um a long time ago there was this demon worshiping person, and he created this map that of the new water lines in America, and it showed like everywhere from the Great Lakes all the way down through the Mississippi as being a huge waterway. And I wonder what the world would look like um, with that waterway there, and how Washington D.C. could even try to control the United States if it was such a big chasm. Maybe this world will turn into two different United States. Who knows?
Well, that should that was it a movie or show? Civil War's coming out very soon. So that's that's a possibility, that could be speaking the kernel of truth that could happen. I mean, it's and that's the thing. And we could say we can potentially see two officially divided states, like the actual Civil War back then. It could be three different states. Who knows? We have no idea. It's going to be some interesting. It's just like this is just to me this eclipse that's going on. It feels like it's just another step to another how do you say it? Another
Stage in the evolution of
yeah, I would
just
say like another level, like you reached level something something, right? And now okay, that's great, what's in this new level, right? Like I'm playing the Mario Brothers. Hey, guess what? Thank you, Mario, for saving me, but the queen's not here. please proceed to the next level. It's like, is this that kind of next level type of thing? So it's going to be very, very interesting. Um,
And by
yeah,
the way, that whole event of that shifting of the continental plates is said to have happened because of this eclipse.
yeah.
Because with the Earth and the Moon and the Sun impacting that fault line that lies behind that cross of the 2017-2024 eclipse, like it causes
Was
a
7 years ago, which was 7 years ago.
yeah,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
these events they have an impact on our continental plates, and so
You guys something to do with any gravitational, like the moon affects our
yeah,
gravitational with the waves and everything, and because it's lined up
yeah.
with the sun.
If both of them are on the same freaking spot and
Mm.
cross the same freaking spot, that's a fault line.
Then you're
It
gonna have
it
some problems.
yeah, and so it'll be interesting to see. And I also that's why I think maybe the police are all there is to maybe help all the citizens get out of the way of disaster. Because if there is a disaster that comes from that fault line splitting, it's definitely going to be good if the government's there to try to help out the civilians. So maybe the government isn't as bad as we think. That's
Well,
always
we
bad.
we, we hope so. Maybe that's the case, that something does happen, but they knew about it and they want to cause any widespread panic. But
Yep.
they're like, hey, but we're here. I think FEMA's prepared right now too, but because of the quoted official report, because of how many people are going to be out there and all that, we're gonna create it now so we're prepared, and it could be something far more devastating, God forbid, uh, where they already knew this was happening, and they're just like, well, we knew, we just want to be prepared. We just we're trying to keep it civil, as much as possible, right?
In,
Um,
in my mind, I just wish that if they knew that the crack in the Earth's gonna happen, I wish that they would just tell us so that so many people didn't flock there just to see this eclipse. Because,
that's true too. That's true too. Yeah, yeah, that's a good point too. We'll see.
but if
Yeah.
if they said they knew, then they'd have to say why they knew, and
Then what else?
that
Then what
sounds
else you been hiding?
cool.
What else you got under those skeletons, that closet, right?
Yeah.
Who killed Kennedy for sure? For sure. Who did this, right? Hey, Robert, before we take off here, I wanted to give you the opportunity. Any last thoughts, any words? I know you shared a very passionate message and from your heart and everything, and I'm grateful for that and blessed to hear that. Any last words you would like to share, buddy, regarding anything CERN, this, or yeah.
My last word is just wake up once in a while and just say hi to God. If you're at all faithful in whatever religion you are, it's awfully nice, I think, to God just to have him, you know, be woken up to you and said hi to you. I know it seems unimportant to us. It seems so trivial. It seems like God already knows we appreciate him, but if there was any chance it makes his day, you don't know what he could change in your world. So that's my last little spirit of wisdom.
I love it, man. Well said. Couldn't say it better myself, Robert. Um, so yeah, that's really well said. I like it. All right. So Robert, you're gonna stay on the line when I end the podcast, okay? Everybody, today I really want to appreciate you guys. Listen to this podcast, listen to Robert. I hope you enjoyed lots of his ideas and his thoughts and his quizziveness and experiences. He's a very good friend, and he's just a wonderful guy. If you ever want to reach out to him, feel free to reach out to me, and I can definitely try to connect you if Robert's cool with that. Um, so everybody, before I take off, please subscribe on the Spotify, Down to Truth, as well as on YouTube. Again, also on Facebook. And please, any comments, questions for myself, to Robert, concerns, thoughts, insults, like I said, boundedtruth34 at gmail.com. eclipse.com. Robert, I'll have you stay on, but again, thank you so much. You've been a blessing, and I just loved everything about what you said.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you.
You got it. You too. Hold.